You done fell right down that rabbit hole, so reality is questionable. Try, but you just can't let it go. These two right here put on the show. It's paranormal overload with southern hospitality. Haunted murder, mayhem, tip while discussing immortality. Locations with a dark past, history that comes to life. Hillbillies with a knack for everything that goes bump at night. Overthinking if you by yourself, these two will have you turning on the lights. Mixing in a little comedy to make sure it all fits in just right. Hey.
Welcome to Hillbilly Horror Stories. Now here's your hosts, Jerry and Tracy Hall, and their dog Ninja.
And sometimes their cat Freddy, but never the ferrets.
I'm Noah LaLonde from Deer Camp 86, and you're listening to Hillbilly Horror Stories.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 407 of Hillbilly Horror Stories.
I'm Tracy, and that's Sherry.
You never get a chance to do that first, so I think,
Yeah.
I'll give you that opportunity.
Oh, is that what it was?
That's exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm. I think you forgot.
I forgot who I was.
Yeah, it's been one of those days.
All right, Tracy. Obviously, we start every episode by thanking all of our military and civil servants all over the world, no matter which country you represent. I definitely won't forget that.
Absolutely.
So thanks to all you men, women, and service animals for everything you do for us on a daily basis.
Amen to that, guys.
Tracy, we need to also make sure that we mention that there are a lot of people struggling right now for various reasons. It doesn't matter what the reason is. If you're struggling, please reach out and talk to someone.
We have our group. You guys can reach out to them. They are so wonderful. We're very proud of our group. There's somebody, we got people from all over the world, so day or night you can, get on our group site and there will be somebody there to talk to. You can also call me or Jerry, or should I say Jerry and I, because that's the correct way to say it.
Is it?
I think so. I don't know. But you guys can call us whenever you need to. We'll be happy to listen. You can also call the crisis number at 988, and you can text 741-741. We love you guys, and please don't think you're alone.
Absolutely. All right, Tracy. So tonight, first of all, let me say we have a very special guest tonight.
Yowzer.
From My Life with the Walter Boys and the new movie that just got released last weekend, Deer Camp 86, Noah LaLonde.
Yes.
Such a talented young man, and I really enjoyed talking with him. So
Yeah.
I think you guys will enjoy his show on Netflix. My Life with the Walter Boys was #1 on Netflix at one point in time.
That's great. And he's a pleasure to look at, by the way.
Okay,
Sorry, babe.
that's fine. All right. So let's talk about tonight's episode before there's a knockdown drag out in here. Tonight, we're going to touch on a topic that we really haven't dealt with on Hillbilly Horror Stories. And that is parallel universes. Tracy, do you know what a parallel universe is?
I don't know. I just think of something side by side, but I don't know what that is. Like a refrigerator. Is that wrong?
Yes, I can tell you that is nowhere near the situation.
Well, why don't you tell us about it?
I'm going to tell you what it is, and then we're going to talk about some people who swear that they've spent some time in a parallel universe.
All right.
All right, so I will say, and this is kind of an aggravation for me. A lot of storytellers and YouTubers and podcasters and whatever the case may be, they want to kind of throw parallel universe stories and time slip stories into the same group of things. And I don't think, in my opinion, that should be the case, because as far as I'm concerned, they're two completely different things.
So that's what frustrates you, that they link it together like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like, they're not the same thing. So to just, that's like saying, Chihuahuas and Maltese are, just because they're both dogs doesn't mean they're in the same group of family. They're two completely different things. Mm-hmm. Same thing when it comes to this. And I'm going to try to break that down for you. let's start with what I think time slip stories are. They're basically an incident where you maybe go back in time in the location that you're currently in. For example, you walk into a hotel. Everything's normal on the outside. But as soon as you get into the hotel, it looks like it's from, say, the 1920s. Decor-wise, the way people, the employees are dressed, maybe some of the people that are staying at the hotel, the way they're dressed, everything looks like you just step back in time.
Mm-hmm.
There's been several stories like this, and then they go to check out, and just to prove the point, it's like $4 to check out. And they're like, well, there's no way it was $4.
Right.
You know, I know Amanda and I actually covered a whole episode from 1979 of this couple, two couples that were traveling across Europe that had that exact same thing happen to them. And then when they went back to try to find the hotel, it no longer existed. Well, that's a time slip story.
Gotcha.
Now, a parallel universe story will typically happen at the same time frame, but the person has, in some cases, a completely different life. So maybe you have a factory worker, we'll say. You wake up one morning and you go to work, but you don't go to the factory. Now, that's what you knew you did, but for some reason, today, you're not going to a factory. It appears you have a whole different job.
Well, that's weird.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was way off with a refrigerator.
So, instead you put on a shirt and your tie and you go to, say, a realtor's office and you're a realtor in this life. So it's like you have a completely different life, but there's still a bunch of stuff that's still the same.
Yeah, that's really bizarre.
Yeah, maybe you live in a completely different house. Maybe you've got a different financial situation going on. But maybe you got the same family members. Maybe you've got the same wife and the same kids, but everything's a little bit different. Kind of like butterfly effect.
Yes.
You know, in that situation. That's more of a parallel universe type story. And some people call it an alternate universe. There's several different names for it. But it's like being in the Twilight Zone, or that the Twilight Zone did a bunch of shows that would have been a different dimension, or you see. So you see what I'm saying? That's the difference. There are scientists believe that there are multiple universes going on all at the same time, and you're in each one of them, but you're doing something a little bit different in each one.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, and sometimes they directly overlap each other, which is where you get these glimpses of yourself in another universe. And then usually it goes right back to the way it was. Not something that stays that way. So with that being said, this week I'm going to cover parallel universe stories. And next week we're going to cover time slip stories. Because they're all fascinating.
Yeah.
They just shouldn't be grouped together.
Together, gotcha.
Right.
Because you don't like that.
Yeah, that aggravates me. And we've done some time slip stories before.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, but we'll do some more. It's been a while. It's been probably 4 or 5 years since we did the time slip story show. All right, so our first story, it's most of these are going to be really short stories, by the way. But they don't need to be long. You know, there's not a lot that goes into it. It either happened or it happened. And let me throw this in there. Mandela effect. We've talked about that before on the show. That's another example of a parallel universe. Our first story will set the tone for this entire episode. Young lady by the name of Karen. She took her 6-year-old daughter for a walk to the playground. Now, Karen and her family had just moved to this neighborhood. This was over in Great Britain, by the way. She didn't know the area well. She did know that there was a playground within walking distance from their house, but wasn't exactly sure how to get there. So she keeps walking the path and doing whatever, and they eventually end up at the playground. Once I guess the little girl started getting kind of fussy. She's ready to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So Karen's
After they just got there?
Well, no, this was at some point.
Oh.
When she got to that point where the kid's ready to go home. Karen's like, look, she's fussy. It took us a while to get here because we just kind of stumbled our way through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put this in GPS on the phone and see if I can find a quicker way to get there. And as you know, if you put in walking, it takes you a whole different way. shorter than driving.
That is true.
So Karen puts in the address and she sees a quicker way home. Wouldn't you know that this quicker way home took them straight through a graveyard?
What?
Now, it was a beautiful day. Birds were singing perfectly normal. But as they got to the cemetery, the atmosphere completely changed. Karen said that it was hard to explain, but it felt extremely flat.
Flat. Wonder what that means.
Well, I mean, like if you hear birds and all
And then
that
it
stuff,
all
then all of a sudden
stops?
just nothing at the
Oh,
time.
that makes sense.
So no birds, no people, just a really oppressive feeling. They also noticed that something didn't seem quite right with the cemetery. For example, there were gravestones that were facing in every direction. You know, normally these stones are kind of,
In a line?
they're in a line or they're, you know, something that would make sense. She said there were no rows of headstones, nothing like that. One would be facing sideways and the one next to it be facing north, and then you got one facing south on the other side. She said none of them made, it was just randomly scattered headstones in every direction, which she had never seen before. She said there was as unorganized as they could possibly be. They also noticed that there was a huge pile of dirt against the side of a little church that was on site of the cemetery. Karen was a little bit scared, but she didn't want to scare her daughter, so she just kind of kept making small talk, right? Well, the daughter, though, seemed to notice it as well. She said, "This is horrible. I don't like it here." Karen looked down at her maps again, and she said it was going completely haywire. And it was taking them directly the opposite way from which they were supposed to be going. It kept changing. It kept moving around. It's like, like when you're out driving and your GPS keeps telling you to take a right and take a left and then rerouting.
Oh, all the time.
It was basically doing that. So Karen ditched the map and she said, "I'm just going to take this main path around to the road." So as the main street came into view, she said everything seemed to go back to normal. Birds, traffic sounds, there was people. It completely changed, like a light switch had went off. She said when they got home, they were talking about it, and Karen kind of shared the info with her husband about what was going on. The daughter called it a creepy graveyard. So the following week, they went back to show the husband. But when they got to the cemetery, it was like a completely different place. There was no creepy vibes at all. They couldn't find any of the headstones that were facing different ways. And there was no pile of dirt next to the church. It was like a completely different place.
Now that is very weird. And her husband was probably like, "I wish you weren't a liar.
Probably so.
Dragging me all the way out here to some graveyard."
So, but you can see how that would be freaky. Her and her daughter both noticed the exact same thing, and then all of a sudden it was different.
Mm-hmm.
That's a parallel universe. That's not a time slip. It's a completely different place at the right time.
Wow, that's creepy.
All right, for this next story, we're going to go to Aspen, Colorado. This was recent, very recent. 2024. That's right, a couple months ago.
Oh.
Sarah is going to a wedding. This is a very odd day to be going for a wedding because it's 3 p.m. on a weekday, Thursday, February 15th.
Well, yeah, that is kind of weird.
It was the wedding of one of her friends and coworkers by the name of Marlene. Now, we're going to get into why this was such a weird date in a bit as far as why it was scheduled that way. But Sarah was waiting for her daughter to get home because her daughter was working. She was going with her to the wedding, and she took a half day at work. She gets home, and she grabs the RSVP off of the refrigerator. I guess it was magneted up there. And they look at it. They're talking about the date. They joke around again about they can't believe they're going to a wedding on a Thursday at 3 o'clock. Well, they get into the car, They start driving, and wouldn't you know, they hit standstill traffic. They didn't have much time because they had to wait for their daughter to get home, so they were already kind of running behind. Now they were just sitting there on the freeway. So it appears they're going to be late. But they were still going to make it to the wedding overall. They just wouldn't be on time. Funny thing happens, though, while they're in the car.
What's that?
Marlene called Sarah. And Sarah proceeds to say, first of all, why are you calling me when you're getting ready to get married? Don't
Right.
you have some stuff going on? But she says, hey, I'm just going to let you know we're probably going to be a few minutes late, but we're still coming. Marlene seemed perplexed. She informed Sarah that the wedding is Sunday, not today, Sunday the 18th. Well, as soon as she hangs up the phone, Sarah looks at her daughter and says, she just said the wedding is not till Sunday. They look at the RSVP and the date now says Sunday the 18th.
How in the heck does that happen?
So here's the problem.
They missed a whole day of work, a half a day of work.
Well, not that kind of problem. Mom and the daughter had both read the date when they arrived, and they talked about it, and they just talked about it again when they pulled it off the refrigerator about how strange it was to have a wedding on Thursday. They were both confused. They didn't have a clue what was going on. They remembered it the exact same way. Not only that, Sarah knew exactly why Marlene had made that strange date choice. I told you we were going to talk about it. So after they received the RSVP, she asked Marlene, why are you getting married on a Thursday? And Marlene went on to give her this long, drawn-out story, which I will cut down for you a little bit, about she had two different family members, who had both been married on February 15th. And they both had very long, happy marriages.
Yeah, so that's she wanted to do
Right.
that.
She felt like it would be good luck to get married on February 15th for that reason. And that date just happened to fall on a Thursday. What are you going to do? But there's more. Marlene said that her fiancé was completely fine with this. He was on board. But his dad was married to her fiancé's stepmother. And the stepmother had a major problem with it being on a Saturday. So she started being on a Thursday. So she started giving all kinds of pushback about the date. And this caused some turmoil in the family. And eventually, her fiancé stood behind her and said, look, she wants to get married on Thursday the 15th. We're getting married on Thursday the 15th. So that day after, she gets the phone call from Marlene saying, no, it's the 18th. Sarah was told by Marlene that the wedding was not Thursday, but Sunday, of course, right? So she asked her, well, what about the 15th? Okay, so let me explain a few things here. Sarah and Marlene both worked together, but they worked remotely. So they didn't see each other when they worked. They had to communicate through instant messenger through work. Most of their conversations had taken place on that messaging app. So when Sarah brought up the date to Marlene over the phone, Marlene seemed perplexed, as I said, because in fact, Marlene did have two family members who had been married on the 15th. They did have long-lasting marriages, and her fiancé did want to schedule the wedding on the 15th, but his stepmother didn't like it. So the stepmother won out, and they decided to schedule it on the Sunday. But Marlene said she didn't remember telling Sarah about any of that. So all this stuff that went on for the reason it was the 15th actually did happen, but Marlene didn't remember telling Sarah any of that. So Sarah goes back, and she starts looking at the instant messages because it would all be in there. But when she went back, there were only messages talking about the catering and the venue. There was no conversation at all about the 15th, the stepmom, or from Marlene that would have told her any of the things that she knew.
You know, that would just really make you think you're crazy.
Exactly. So in this scenario, Marlene was going to get married on the 15th, and that's the way it was. But somehow in the other universe, it was the 18th. And somehow it appears that they crossed. And that's how she knew that stuff, because in that universe, she did tell her all that stuff, and she did schedule the 15th. But in the universe they were in right there driving to the wedding, it was completely opposite. Or not opposite, but it was completely different.
Right, sure. Well, you ain't going to get many gifts on a Thursday, probably, just letting you know. Oh, pretty good idea to move it.
But again, and I'm going to keep reiterating this, again, you can see that's not a time slip. That wasn't like she went back in time.
Right.
It was similar things going on. That's my point. It's similar. There were weddings going on in both universes. It was the same workers, the same daughter. It's just tiny differences in what the reality was. All right, Tracy. So now we're going to do a few more quick stories. Tracy, this next story goes back to 2008. There was a young woman by the name of Lorena. She wakes up like any other morning, but this was going to be the start of a very crazy adventure. At first, it was small things. For example, when she woke up that morning, she noticed that the bed sheets were different and her pajamas were different. But things were going to escalate when she got to work. You see, her office was not her office. Even though she worked in the same building, she was in a completely different department. In fact, she had never met her boss that she had on this day. It's like she walked into a completely new environment, but at the same time, she knew how to do her job. She just didn't remember anything that had happened before today. She remembered it completely different as it being a different job, but in the same building. So she knew this wasn't a situation where she got lost or confused. She gets through the workday. She goes home. Her boyfriend's there. But this wasn't her current boyfriend. This was her ex-boyfriend. But now it's her current boyfriend. Somehow they were now back together, which she had no recollection of. Before this day started, she'd actually been dating another guy for several months, but he doesn't seem to exist in this new life.
Yikes.
So then she decided, I think I might be going a little bit loony, and she was seeking psychiatric help. She goes to see a psychiatrist, but all the tests showed that she was a completely sound mind. So the next strange occurrence is when she asked her family how her sister was doing. Her sister had just recently had shoulder surgery. Her family was confused because her sister hadn't had any type of surgery. In fact, no one in the family had had any recent surgeries. So Lorena has no idea what happened, but she thinks she woke up in an alternate universe that was slightly changed due to the decisions that she had made. And yes, she is still in that world years later.
What?
Yep.
Well, how does that happen?
I don't know. Whatever changed stayed the same for her after it changed.
I didn't know that was possible.
Well, I didn't either. I guess somehow she stayed. In most cases, people will get in a parallel universe situation like in the other stories, and then they're just out of it.
Uh-huh.
But in this one, no.
I wonder if she was happy about that. What if she liked her new boyfriend better than the old boyfriend?
I doubted her. She wouldn't have broke up with him. Or maybe he broke up with her. I don't know. I don't know how that ended.
Yeah.
All right, Tracy. I have a classic parallel universe story up next. But first, we got to take a quick sponsor break. All right, Tracy, this goes back to 2006. Carol was on a road trip, and she was driving through San Bernardino, California, on her way to Paris, California. She sees a sign on the way of a city called Riverside. This is a city where she grew up as a child, and she still had several relatives that lived there.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, you know what? I've got a little bit of time. I'm going to jump off the exit and check out the old town. So she gets to town. She noticed that everything looked different from how she remembered it. She was unable to find the house that she grew up on. She tried to find the street that her grandmother used to live, but that street was completely different as well. When she tried to visit her grandparents' grave, the cemetery didn't even exist. So even the people living in the town gave her a creepy vibe. She said she didn't even want to get out of her car, and she didn't. So she just continued on with her trip. Carol didn't return to Riverside until a few years later when her father passed away. She went there to attend the funeral. But this time, everything was exactly how she remembered it from her childhood. She thinks that for whatever reason on that day, she ended up in a parallel universe, at least a parallel universe form of Riverside. She even went on to say that she feels like had she gotten out of that car that day, she would have been stuck there.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, you don't want to be stuck somewhere you don't know what it is or who the people are, for sure. She made a good decision.
It sounds like it. Okay, I don't have a date for this one. There's a young lady, she was driving home from work. It was on a route that she drives to and from work and has for the last several years. As she's driving along the freeway on her way home, she starts to feel very anxious, almost on the verge of a panic attack. She keeps driving, and suddenly she sees this huge power plant all lit up on the side of the road. She's super confused because she makes this trip, like I said, twice a day, and she's never seen this power plant. Her boyfriend calls, and he asks her to pick up some McDonald's on the way home. No problem. She gets to the drive-thru, and she sees an employee that she's never seen there before. She goes to this McDonald's, according to her, multiple times a week. That's not good for you, first of all.
No, it's not. Maybe it was just a new hire.
But
That's why she hadn't seen it.
Good. She was surprised to see a new face. So the employee said he had worked there for a couple of months. And he was the only employee at the drive-thru. He said he works the drive-thru every day that he's at work. And been there a couple of months, and she's never seen him. She takes the food home. She sits down. She tells her boyfriend about the power plant. Her boyfriend doesn't really know what she's so surprised about because he says that power plant has always been there. So now she's driving past this power plant every day, twice a day, with no clue how it got there or how she's missed it for all these years.
Yeah, it's kind of pretty hard to miss,
Exactly.
I would say. So, well, at least she got her McDonald's.
Well, it doesn't stop there, though. She also notices some differences in her life. For example, her dog doesn't know how to do the tricks it used to know. Her boyfriend also pronounces some words differently than he used to. I didn't have an example on that. Tracy, is it possible that they drove in a different direction on the way home from work that day? But she says she drives the same way every single day.
I mean, yeah, you would think she would know that.
Yeah, you would think. So, I don't know. And the boyfriend knew it was there. This next story involves a man possibly being saved by himself in a parallel universe. Now, I know that sounds very confusing, so let me explain. He wants to remain anonymous, so I don't have a name. Not that anybody's going to look him up anyway.
Seriously.
So we're going to call him Alan. He was out walking one day when he sees a version of himself across the street. Now, at first, Alan thought that he was just seeing things. But no, across the street was himself.
And he said, hey, myself over there.
They were both staring at each other.
Oh, I'm sure.
They were dressed in identical clothes. They stop and they stare at each other for a second. And then his twin suddenly yells out, "Run." Now, at that exact moment, a car came hurling toward Alan's twin, we'll call him. He saw himself get hit by that car.
Oh, wow.
Alan turned and ran, such as he was told to do, and it's a good thing he did, because seconds later, that same car that he had just seen came hurling towards him. He looked back, and his look-alike and the car that had hit him were gone. But there was a real accident that occurred right in front of him. Had he not run, he would have been hit and possibly killed by that car. He believes that his parallel universe self saved him from dying that day.
Well, that's cool.
All right, last story. Hope you guys are enjoying these stories. I kind of like these little what the hell's going on type stories. A woman and her husband buy a house out in the country. There was some work that needed to be done, so they were traveling to it on the weekends to do the work and then staying in their regular house in the meantime. It was a small town, and one week they noticed that there was this little restaurant that for some reason they had never noticed before. They went in to get some breakfast. There was an older man there and another customer with a cowboy hat on, and the one with the cowboy hat on told them to go ahead and seat themselves. So they go sit at a little table that was right in the middle of the restaurant. The restaurant was rather busy, and they ordered breakfast. They ate their food. Everything seemed completely normal. They leave, they go do their work. The next weekend, they decided, you know what, we're going to go eat at that restaurant again. Problem was, that restaurant wasn't there. Everything else in the city looked exactly the same, but that restaurant wasn't there. They drove all over town. They drove even the out roads. There's only a few roads that lead into town. They rode all of them, and they couldn't find it. They both remembered it being the exact same place, and they remembered all the businesses around it, but the restaurant wasn't there.
Did they stop and ask anybody, or did they think they could?
They actually did. They stopped and they started asking some of the surrounding businesses, and they were like, "No, we don't remember that restaurant many means." So they did find a building that they could have sworn was the restaurant, and it was a restaurant at one time, but it had been boarded up and obviously hadn't been used in a couple of years.
That is crazy. I wonder how the food was
I don't know.
when they went.
I mean, it's good enough where they were coming back the next week. So, Tracy, that's one story that some people, and this is how they get grouped together, that's one that some people might say was a time slip story. But here's why it's not. If they'd have mentioned the people looked like they were in old-time clothes, or they didn't. They said that everybody seemed normal. Everything seemed normal, from the dresses and all that stuff. Unless it was a time slip from like 2 weeks before, where everybody would have had the same type of clothes on.
Sure.
But that's the difference. That would have been a parallel universe story, where in that universe there's a restaurant there, where in their universe it wouldn't. But that's not a time slip story. So I hope it kind of breaks it down. And next week when we do time slip stories, it'll be probably the same thing. There'll be 5 or 6 of those stories, and they'll be fun too.
Yeah, those are interesting for sure.
All right, so we're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to be back with Noah LaLonde from My Life with the Walter Boys and his new movie, Deer Camp 86. Can't wait. All right, guys, we got a couple of more weeks, basically, to be able to sign up for the cruise. Hillbilly Horror Stories for Ohio, September. You got to have all your money paid by, I think, the first week of July.
Wow.
Rapidly approaching.
Dude, I don't even understand. It's hard to believe. How have we been in Florida, what, 5 months, 4 months?
Yep, since the end of January.
That is just so crazy to me. But it is. These daggone years just fly by anymore. I don't know if it's because we're old now or...
Oh, sure it is. The clock's ticking on us.
Oh, that's true. But yeah, if you guys, want to sign up and get it paid for in time, that would be wonderful. The more the merrier. We had a really, really great time on the last cruise. So, and we got to meet so many awesome peeps.
Or if you've been making payments on it and you still got, a little bit left, go ahead and get that taken care of.
Right.
All right. Also, the next thing to talk about is our live show in St. Augustine, Florida. You can call up Beecher's Lodge and get some special deals on rooms. I think they had 10 rooms available to start. I'm not sure how many they have now. It's a nice place. It's right on the beach. They've got a pool. as well. It's a fun place. We'll be doing the show on the premises there in their conference room. It's where we did it at last time. If you came to the last one, and that's August 17th, so that's coming up here pretty quick.
All right.
And there's only 60 seats available, and I think half of them are gone already.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to plan on coming, you want to snag that. That's our 8th anniversary show. History Goes Bump. Diana Kelly will be there. It's going to be a blast. And then if you made it to Casadega and didn't get all the thrills because the place was smaller,
Yeah.
we will have the projector. We'll have all the music videos and everything that goes along with the full length show at this one. So
That's
we'll
true.
be excited.
Yeah, wasn't much room to turn around the other place,
No.
so
No, I changed my mind on the menu and I had to go outside to do that.
I know
So,
that's right.
Tracy, what do you got going on over there?
Well, we got some really nice iTunes reviews, and we appreciate those so much, guys. Thank you for taking the time to do that. We had S.K. Morse, 007, David Bentley, Isaac from West Virginia. And Isaac, did we do that story he was wanting us to do?
Isaac is what, 11?
Yes.
And he wants us to do the Mothman. We did a Mothman story back, and Dina was on that episode. It's been a long time ago. Just if you go to Google and search Hillbilly Horror Stories and Mothman, that episode will pop up.
Okay, great. Mike Lynch and Mojo Lobster, thank you guys so much for your reviews. They were awesome, and we really appreciate it. Keep them
Absolutely.
coming.
And with Mojo Lobster, there was something. Didn't he ask something?
Yeah, he said something about some of the shows wasn't popping up. If we
Send me an email because I've for some reason lost your information. Send me an email or call me. My number's readily available, and we'll get it worked out. We'll figure it out
Absolutely.
because everything should be fine. Everything is showing up on our end, so we'll get it figured out. You might just have to unsubscribe and resubscribe.
Okay.
All right, let's listen to Noah LaLonde. All right, guys, I am super excited for this. I found out about this a couple of weeks ago, and I've been able to keep it quiet. So I'm not even going to waste a lot of time on this. You've seen him on Life with the Walter Boys. He's plays Cole on there. He's an perfect character, perfect role for Noah LaLonde. And he's here to tell us about his new movie that he's one of the main characters in, Deer Camp 86. Welcome to the show, Noah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's start with this. Obviously, you're on here because we want to promote the new movie, Deer Camp 86, that just got released in theaters. I know it's playing in a theater not too far from me, and we're going to talk about that. But we have to start with Life with the Walter Boys. What has that done for you since that has started playing on Netflix?
You know, that's a great question. It's changed my life in pretty much every way, and the way that it has made people who didn't know who I was before know who I am now. It's given my career the ability to have another day, and it's given me a place to find some fulfillment in just being able to be an artist and be an actor. And you know, I know a lot of people work really hard for a really long time to have a sliver of the opportunity that this show gave me, and the type of people I've got to meet have been amazing. And yeah, it's just kind of changed the course of my career as an actor in almost every way. So it's been a treat. But most importantly, with both the show and the movie, I've been able to finally do something that I can share with all the people I love. Because for so long it was, oh yeah, you know, I worked on this little short film, and it's probably never going to come out, or hey, I did this little indie thing, and you may never see it, but it kind of made people that I know believe me when I said I was an actor.
Oh,
So,
there you go. So tell people, if they haven't seen Life with the Walter Boys, give your best description of what the movie is. Because I honestly look at it as like a brotherly, obviously, competition type situation, kind of like Supernatural, but in a whole different shade of light. You guys are not the Winchester brothers, but give people a description if they haven't seen it.
Of Walter Boys, not
Yes.
so. Yeah, Walter Boys is I think it's a really great family show that kind of sets you into this world where there's two things going on. There's our main character, played by Nikki Rodriguez, is Jackie Howard, and her world gets flipped upside down. She loses her family in an accident, and then enters the other part of the show, which is this enormous Walter family, where there is nothing but surplus when it comes to family members. So she comes from her fashion, kind of high class New York lifestyle into her godmother's home in rural Colorado, where there's 10 people in the house, horses, dogs, swimming pool, and you're on a ranch, and chaos ensues. She is going through all the things that I think a normal high school girl will go through with navigating your own feelings and emotions, but then you mix in the fact that you just lost all the people that you care about. And it's just this recipe for a coming of age chaos tale for her. And it gets to take that romantic turn when I think she gels with some of the brothers more than others, and then that's kind of where that gets set in action, and then you kind of watch it unfold, and you have a pretty entertaining story of some competitive brothers, some real love story, and I think a tale of finding family. So you mix all that together and you have My Life with the Walter Boys.
It's an awesome show. The first season was obviously a huge hit. Am I under the correct assumption that there is already a green light for a season two?
Yes, we received the very we were very excited to receive a pretty quick renewal from the first season. So we're gearing up hopefully to get that in action pretty soon. But yeah, we're super excited about that because I think the reception has been great and a lot of people have really enjoyed it. And it makes it even more exciting to get to do more, both for the fact that it is so creatively fulfilling for me and all of our wonderful cast, but also that there are people that are anticipating it. And um, it's really cool thing to be a part of.
All right. Noah, let's talk about why you're on here. Now, obviously, people know what we do on here. We don't you typically bring on people that are starring in family, shows. We're usually all about the horror, and you're on here because Deer Camp 86. Now,
Yeah.
this is something you've been working on for a long time, and you're from Michigan,
Yes.
and you got a chance to film this movie in Michigan. It's my understanding. Tell everybody the premise of the movie. Obviously, you don't want to give too much of it away because we want people to go see it. But
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about when you guys started making this, the difficulties you had making it through timing and I guess COVID and everything else that might have come involved, and how you got to where you're at now. What kind of feelings you have towards where it's at right now, being in theaters.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, if you are either, I feel like there are probably two different listeners here. One version that are used to your show that are saying, who is this guy that did this, this teen love story Netflix show? And then there are probably some people that might have watched that show and said, what is this podcast like? So there's very much, they don't know the other side. So they are different. These two things are very different. So the thing I last described, the Walter Boy show, you can start by the complete opposite. That's what Deer Camp 86 is. But the way it intertwines in my own life and my career is pretty fun and interesting. So back in 2020, obviously COVID was kind of at its peak, at its beginning, and it was right around the time that I decided I was going to be an actor full time. So I was sent a casting call audition from an old acting coach, and this was probably October of 2020, and I read for this part, and I got a call the next day, and um, I got the part. So it was the timeline of it is so interesting because I had not moved to Los Angeles. I had not worked on this Netflix show. I had not really done much of note to this point. So I was just super excited to have any opportunity to be an actor, let alone one where I got to film a movie in my home state, just a few hours north of me in beautiful Ludington, Michigan. And if you see the movie, you know, the setting, the Michigan, the northern Michigan woods and forests, it's really a character in the film. So to be able to do that was just a dream come true as it was happening. And we were on set for, like you said, it was it was tight quarters. So we were in COVID, so we had a tight group, and we all got our tests. We all made sure we were good, and then we kind of packed into this little group, and we made this movie. We were in the woods, literally, and when we weren't there, we were staying at this little motel together, which was it's just a beautiful area. So you're right by the water, and it's fall, the leaves are changing, so you have that spooky environment around you. I always liken it to those movies where you have like the Disney, like the Hocus Pocus. You have that setting that is the leaves falling, everything is good, it's Halloween, and what could go wrong? And we kind of were living in that, both in the way that we're right up there up north and in a cabin in the woods, as my eye catches the poster over there.
Yeah.
And we're also making a movie where, you know, deer camp happens right in that same time of year, and it's supposed to be a good thing. It's supposed to be a fun brotherly bonding type of trip, and it's kind of the same setting. It's like you're about to have a great weekend. And I know I'm a little all over the place here, but to pick back up with where the kind of a little synopsis of the movie without giving too much away. 6 best friends going up to deer camp. Spirits are high, everyone's excited. There's a lot of alcoholic beverages flowing, and very quickly it becomes a tale more so of understanding the karmic forces of the natural world, of, you know, the native land. One of the things about this movie is, as fun as it is, and both comedically and with the horror elements, there's a great message of which we've talked about at length. But one of the inspirations for the film was the ongoing issue that is missing and murdered Indigenous women and people, which is an issue that has plagued the Native community for a long time. So in all of the fun that this movie was, we worked closely with some local tribal Indigenous women and people, and they were a part of the process and making sure that everything was displayed in a way they felt comfortable with. Some of them had I don't want to give anything away, but they had parts in embodying that spirit that ends up being a big part of this movie. So there's all these things going on, but to keep it brief, 6 friends going up for an unsuspecting great time with each other, a lot of beers, a lot of deer camp, and it becomes a story of you're going to pay for what you did. The natural world, the native spirits are a lot stronger than you think, and you can't keep getting away with this. And that's kind of the brief summary I'd give for having watched it so many times now, and having watched so many different groups of people watch it, there's so many new things that they tell me stood out to them, or they tell me they enjoyed. And so I think ultimately it's a movie you can have a lot of fun with. And I think it's a movie that you can take a really wonderful message out of, but you can also not take it too seriously, because it is pulled all the way back to 1986. And there's some elements that are really aware of themselves, but also really indicative of the time. And they almost seem shocking, a little jarring when you hear them in the theater. But I think that kind of sets the tone for what world they're in. So, yeah, I would say that's my little brief synopsis. And I know you mentioned some of the challenges, but I'd love to touch base. I have a tendency to be pretty tangent oriented when asking questions in this setting. So, what did I miss in my response for you?
What about how you feel about the movie finally coming out, finally being released on theaters so people can actually see it, you know, aside from maybe some festivals that there was a part of?
Yeah, definitely. I think that is that is very similar to how, when you asked me how the Netflix show it changed a lot of things for me. This kind of continues in that vein of is this really happening to me? That this is crazy. Because like I said, we filmed in October of 2020, and as much as I was excited about hearing something the next week I got home, that just doesn't happen in this business. I've come to learn. You can put a ton of work into something, it can absorb nearly your whole life, but as soon as it's over, that version of it is over, and you have to do a lot of waiting, and you have to do a lot of wondering, and that was the story with this. So that's kind of when I personally got busy trying to plan my move to Los Angeles, trying to plan the next steps of my career. So I was able to do that pretty freely, eventually letting go of the result of this whole thing. And by the time I finally moved to LA, I had got a call that the movie was going to be having a little screening, and it's like, oh, it's it's still alive. It's still out there. And having filmed it in northern Michigan, I remember thinking to myself, wow, I've just gotten to LA, and the, it's a different, it's almost a different culture. It's a different crowd. So I was anxious to see how it would be received, but the laughter was the same, the jumps were the same, and I said to myself, kind of, this could be cool. This could be really cool. And again, after that, I kind of let it go, and I went on to get the part of my life with the Walter Boys and film that. And the actor strike came about. I got word that our show was coming out. Everything kind of again veered toward the new things I was doing. Walter Boys comes out as a ton of success that I'm incredibly grateful for. And then as that starts to become a little bit of the new norm, I start to hear about the everything deer camp related, and that there might be a couple festival things we might be attending, and including Dallas and the Dallas International Film Festival, which was a great time, and again another time for me to experience a new audience taking all of this in, and from seeing people enjoy it, both across the entire this whole spectrum of people. Now that I had some fans of the show that were there, they enjoyed the show. Okay, so there's a crossover element. People can enjoy both.
Nice.
There was a new slew of just completely people from that area that I had never met. They seemed to enjoy it. Okay, now maybe it's universally accepted. And we even had some local native women from Dallas that I got to have the pleasure to speak with, and they were really pleased with it. So, okay, this is doing. I've never seen someone tell me to my face that they didn't enjoy it, and and then I get the word that this theatrical release is going to be happening, and it kind of is this. It's like the tale of what these last few years have been for me. Learning to let go of, learning to enjoy the thing while I'm doing it, and letting the results and what comes next just come to me without forcing it. And to get these calls that something's going to be happening like this, we're going to get to go back to Michigan. We're going to get to promote it a little bit. I'm going to get to be with my family, the people who, again, I'm so grateful to have sharing all this stuff with me. So it was all of that excitement, but then in the back of my mind, I was also excited because I think it's a really fun movie, and I think it's something that I've watched enough different people enjoy in ways that I didn't even know if I expected, because it's hard to remove yourself from the final product and maybe what it could be. So I've seen it from I've watched so many people enjoy it that it makes me really excited, and to have the process be almost nearly 4 years, um, it's kind of a testament to what life can be. It doesn't always happen right away, but when it happens, it's kind of the perfect timing, because I'm as excited as ever about it. And as I can continue to do some research on your show and see your background, the horror genre isn't something that I will attempt to claim expertise over, but I see the passion for it, and it's been pretty cool to interact with some of those fans at some of these different screenings and festivals, and that passion is so alive, and to be just have a sliver of that, taking in something that I got to be a part of, is really special. and kind of inspires me to revisit some of my favorite classics and kind of see how ours stacks up. Not even stacks up, but just the types of feelings that those old ones make me feel, and that the new ones. The genre can change so much over. I'm 26, but over 30, 40 years, the way movies are made changes so much, but specifically the way movies in different genres get made and the way they're enjoyed and the way that, you know, cult classics get made and what works and what doesn't. It's been really fascinating to kind of watch all that happen.
So let me ask you this without pigeonholing the movie. You mentioned Cabin in the Woods earlier. You
Mm.
mentioned there's obviously comedic elements as along with the horror elements. Would you put this in the same type of category as a Cabin in the Woods or Evil Dead or those type of movies that are a mixture of comedy and horror without comparing you to those exact movies, but would you say it's along those lines?
Y- You know, I'm going to be so transparent with you. I haven't seen Cabin in the Woods. I I just know that every time I talk about the movie, I talk about literally being in a cabin in the woods, and so I've been forced to. And then as I was saying, and I saw it on your wall. So I wouldn't even. I've never been a fan of comparison. It just generally because working on something, one, eh, the process of trying to understand what it is while you're doing it such a task. And then when it comes out, comparing that with what you had in your mind can be so cognitively dissonant for you. So having done that with the show and having done that with the movie, I always have a hard time comparing because the way people absorb stuff is so different. But I don't know. In my head, I feel like I don't want to say it's along that same line because I don't know. And I don't really know if I have a cohesive answer for why, but it feels like when I watch the movie, there are times when I watch it and I think, man, that's a funny movie. I mean, I was laughing a lot, and I'll walk out of the theater and I'll talk to some of the people who watch it, and they'll say, "You didn't tell me it was so scary," and I'm like, well, yeah, I guess, but like I said, you get
Yeah.
numb to watching yourself work in something, and then sometimes I'll watch it, I'm like, man, that actually is scarier than I thought. Like, I was kind of on my toes the whole time, and then I'll come out and I'll hear someone say something completely different, but I think it kind of touches nicely. It breezes over, like I said, both genres pretty fluently. So. I would be far more interested in hearing. Have you seen the movie?
I haven't. I've seen the trailer about 4 times, but I haven't seen the movie yet.
I would be far more interested to hear someone like yourself who has such a familiarity with horror specifically, how it ranks amongst like that question you asked me. I'd love to hear your answer post seeing it, or someone of the same sort of feeling. Oops, sorry. Um, because like I said, I have such a I don't know. I know that I've seen so many people interpret it differently. So it makes me interested to hear other opinions more so than whatever I have of them.
We're talking to Noah LaLonde. He's a star, one of the stars, I should say, of Life of the Walter Boys on Netflix, and the movie that was just released, Deer Camp '86. It's gotten great reviews. It definitely by the trailer, and I'll put the trailer up on our site so people can see that. But the trailer looks to me like something that if I didn't know anything about it and it just came on TV, I'd be like, well, we're going to the movies to see this weekend. It would definitely be a first weekend type movie for me. And there's not a whole lot of those out there, for me that I feel like that I have to go see as soon as it comes out. But this would definitely be one of them. It looks like a fantastic movie. It looks like it would be a fun ride. And it's right up my alley for the type of movies I like the most.
Yeah. Like I said, like I've said versions of now, probably more in the last 2 weeks than ever, but I've been shocked at the variety of people who have kind of said something similar. And I think the best way to describe it is that it is a really fun ride. And you get to know these guys quick and you feel like you're on the trip with them. And you always kind of feel like like something's going on that maybe you don't fully understand. And before you know it, you're kind of right smack in the thick of, oh, I didn't understand it. And now I am in it. So I think it is fun, and I think I've kind of consistently seen people have a good time, laughing with that bewildered look on their face when they walk out, and there's nothing that brings me more joy than to see that.
I'll tell you a funny story. We have you're from the area, so you know as well as I do, even if it's not reality, Detroit kind of has a national reputation as, oh no, that place is, it's just a violent place, or it's a whatever the case is. Doesn't mean it's true. And we've got a really good friend that lives in Detroit, and we decided we were going to do a show up there last year. So we went up June and July and did a live event up in the Detroit area. And I thought it was funny because we would kid around about that with one of our really good friends that lives in the Detroit area, and we would kid around, and she would get so offended by the fact that she was like, "It's not like that at all. Wait till you get up here." And I got to honestly say, when we went up there, it's a place I would definitely come back to. It was absolutely beautiful. It was nothing like in my head what I thought, but I did think it was funny that in the trailer of the movie, the one character says, "I'm going back to Detroit where it's safe," or something like that. But he said something along the same lines, and I thought, see, everybody must think that, even people from the area. They put it in the movie.
Yeah, I think when you hear something enough in like the mainstream, there's definitely a feeling of embodying that thing. I I've heard it my whole life, yeah. If you're going into the city, which I think in any
That's
city,
everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, there's always in any place, there's always areas where, maybe are less safe than others. But for whatever reason, I think that's another thing about the movie is there's a lot of those fun moments where especially now watching it, 30 years, 28 years later than when it is set in, you're like, oh, well, yeah, that's a thing that people have said and they still say sometimes. There's a lot of those little allusions to, man, if somebody in the future watched this, they'd probably think it's pretty funny. It knows what it is, the movie. But I also have a friend. I'm probably 30 minutes north of Detroit. But one of my best friends lives there, and I was there 2 days ago for some of the Grand Prix. They're having a racing event in the city, which is very cool. But as I've become an adult, I love Detroit. I think it's a fantastic area to hang out, and especially when the sports teams are rocking. And the NFL draft was just there. They had
Hmm.
record breaking numbers. So I think it's for me, it almost feels like a joke that I'm in on. Was something like a quip like that in the movie is, yeah, everyone talks about it, so I guess we'll kind of join in on it. But I think even to be very detailed, in the last 10 years, like I said, these are my formative years, but in the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of, which feels like a lot of money and care put into the restoration of some areas of Detroit. And I've certainly enjoyed being back every time I'm back. But that is a great line. A lot of people comment on that line in the trailer. So
So no, the movie is out at theaters. Deer Camp '86 was also the year I graduated, so I'm excited about that part of it. Bring back
you'll
some
really know.
memories.
You'll really be able to give us a good comparison if it was tells the story of the time.
So aside from being out at theaters, is it also out streaming as well?
Not currently. Not
Okay.
currently. I don't have all the answers on this topic, but I know that there's work being done as to where it'll be post theatrical run. So as you can imagine, for my out of state friend, I'm or not that it's not out of state, but there's a sporadic places where that
Right.
is. So I have a lot of questions about that, and I'm deferring them to. I'll have the answer soon, hopefully.
Tell everybody how they can keep up with you and your career as far as social media and what have you, and how they can find out more about the movie.
Yeah, I my main platform is, I'd say, Instagram is where I'm most active. That's Noah LaLonde, uh, and we keep up with I try to keep up with everything I'm working on, and most recently you'll see the Deer Camp trailer, the little snippet trailer that we cut for social media, and there's a Deer Camp movie Instagram page, deercamp86.com. I believe it would be the link for all things Deer Camp, showtimes, any information on streaming. And yeah, I would say Instagram, Facebook, there's a lot of information being spread, and a lot of the reactions from the movie, a lot of images from different theaters and images from some of the characters and actors being there in theaters. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Deer Camp 86 movie, Noah Lalonde separately, and yeah, all over.
And guys, on Instagram, he's just a hair under 1 million. So if you hear this, go ahead and follow Noah on Instagram. I think you're like, when I looked, you're like 986,000 or something like it. It might be even more now, but you're not too far away from 1 million.
Yeah, we're getting there slowly, slow and steady. Like I said, the whole last few years have been crazy, but it's definitely people will always, my family are like, "Hey, did you see?" I'm like, I got a whiff of it. Yeah, I heard about it.
Noah, thank you so much for coming on the show. I can't help but to wish you much success in everything you do in the future. I hope the movie is a huge hit with the audience reviews that I've already seen, and the way people are receptive to it. I can't help but to think this is going to be a blockbuster when it's all said and done.
Well, I appreciate you for having me and for those kind words, and I hope the same. Like I said, I love hearing the passion, especially from horror fans, and I hope they welcome us into their lives.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.